Greetings, my fellow boobs and bollocks, and welcome to Jeffrey Kitsch's special-tacular 5,000 subscriber special Q&A awesomeness. Cack. Due to the fact that 75% of my fans, i.e. you peoples, are only interested in my videos when they have something to do with a certain little blue steam locomotive and his acquaintances, that made me worry that the questions I was receiving were all going to be very anchored to that particular subject, but no, much like the content of my channel, there's a good variety of different topics. If you find that I've either missed your question or I've not really answered what you asked, just type it again down below and I'll give you a written response. Question number 1.
Who would you rather go to dinner with? Old man or
My God!
lion?
Do we perhaps have a fellow Phalus fan? I'm going to pick Old Man because, of course, while we wait for our food to arrive, he can entertain me with various stories from the creepypastas he's read.
Who are your favourite characters in Thomas and Friends?
Henry the Green Engine, Duck the Great Western Engine, James the Red Engine, Duncan, and the Goods Train Fireman.
Who cares?
Who's your favourite character from Lucky Luke?
The Dalton brothers, although I do have a soft spot for the Undertaker.
Who's your favourite Asterix character?
When I was younger, it was definitely Cacophonix, mostly because I would always play as him when I played Asterix Mega Madness. Thinking about it, I do enjoy Vital Statistics a lot more. I think he's got that Captain Mannering, sort of self-appointed, pompous leader. There's layers of humour to the character, like he has to be levitated above everyone else.
What are your favourite Simpsons characters?
Obviously Homer, but Moe, Mr Burns, Groundskeeper Willie, and Lenny. I suppose by default you have to say Lenny and Carl, but for a sort of double act, they aren't always joined at the hip. I don't know if that's changed in the last 10 years or so when I've been watching less and less of the show, but certainly in the first 15 years of The Simpsons, there'd be quite a lot of times you would see Lenny without Carl.
Besides Iago, who's another bird villain or anti-hero you like?
I can't think of another bird villain, unless you count Daffy Duck.
Shoot him! Shoot him!
Favourite anti-hero? The Man with No Name, also known as Joe, Manco, and Blondie.
What's your top 5 favourite Looney Tune characters?
Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, Sylvester, with or without Tweety, Forkhorn Leghorn, and Yosemite Sam.
What's your favourite and least favourite cartoon character of all time?
Well, for those of you who haven't watched my Iago video, there was another character who made his debut in 1992 that not only made me a very keen viewer of Aladdin sequels, but is, in all honesty, my favourite character from anything ever. Least favourite cartoon character of all time? I'm looking around my room for inspiration. Pepe Le Pew?
Which Postman Pat character would you ship with Tesco sparkling diet lemonade?
Will somebody tell me what the joke is?
What is the worst Lucky Luke comic?
I haven't actually read all the Lucky Luke comics. I've read practically all of them. I think the only one I haven't read that was written by Goscinny is The Singing Wire. The 2 comics I've read since Morris has died are The Daltons Tie the Knot and the Lone Riders one. Didn't really care for either of them, but I think it's a bit of a cop-out to pick those 2 because they've been made after the creators have passed.
Opinions on the Gaston comics and films?
Gaston Lagaffe, for those of you who don't know, he's an office worker, but he's very lazy. He's always making these weird inventions. I really enjoyed them. In fact, I still have all the comics, but they're all in French because it's one of the many that wasn't translated into English. Though they are now I think they've done 2 now, where he's called Gomer Goof, which I don't like. What's wrong with Gaston Le Gaff? Yes, Gomer Goof is sort of an English translation of the name, but still Gaston Le Gaff. It's almost a bilingual title, isn't it? It looked about as good as I thought it would be, based on the trailer. I, of course, haven't seen the overall film, so I don't know if it turns out better or if it's even worse than the trailer made it appear. They did a TV series which I really enjoyed, which was just doing straight up adaptations of the comics. So it was like a sketch show cartoon.
What is your favourite Asterix book?
I'm going to pick Asterix and the Roman Agent, purely because it's the most recent Asterix comic I've read.
How did you discover Franco-Belgian comic books?
My dad is from Algeria, which is an African country that's had a lot of French culture in it, and in fact they were sort of brought up to be bilingual, to speak Arabic and French. I think it was part of the French Empire or French occupation of that country. I don't really know much about that, but something to do with that. And then of course he lived in France for 10 years, which is where he met my mum, who isn't French, by the way. So growing up, it was only natural that when he'd see elements of French culture in Britain, he would want to make sure that I knew about it. So, of course, there was Asterix and Tintin. They were easily available in English, and the films were as well. But as for Lucky Luke, Gaston Le Gaff, Achille Tanor, Boulet Bill, practically every year we'd go on holiday to France for a week or 2. Middle west part of France. The weather was never spectacular, but it was certainly warmer than it was up in Scotland. And every time I'd come back from the holiday with arms full of comics, all in French. I'd only get the comics translated to me once, which being, I don't know, 6 years old, 7 years old. As every year I got older, I would also forget what exactly the translations were, so it got to the stage where I was just making up what they were saying based purely on what was going on in the drawings. Which, to be honest, is exactly what I did for Asterix and Tintin, because they used quite a lot of big words. I wasn't that big a fan of Tintin, to be honest, or at least the comics. My sister loved reading the Tintin comics. I stuck with the Asterix ones. However, I did love watching the animated TV series of Tintin.
Where did you get those really nice Asterix and Tintin figurines?
I bought on eBay, and you can do just the same thing. Go now and search if you can find all the collector stuff of Asterix and Tintin.
Do you think William and Jack are just unnecessary?
They're certainly not unnecessary, because without them, Joe would have murdered Averil several times over. I think you can make the argument that only one of them was needed, either William or Jack. The joke is they do exactly the same thing. They are the same characters. But of course, the Daltons we know in Lucky Luke are the cousins of the real Dalton brothers. It was Bob, Grant, Bill and Emmett, who were comedically based on the real-life Dalton gang. They all basically have the exact same personality. In addition to looking exactly alike, they are exactly alike. It's just that the shortest one is the leader. Emmett, the tallest one, wasn't an idiot. So that's why the cousins of the Daltons, there's 4 of them when really there could have just been 3.
What are your favourite Franco-Belgian comics?
Here's a clue. I've made videos about them.
What is your least favourite Asterix comic?
Although it would be more interesting to actually consider the original comics, which one of them I dislike the most, I'm just going to go and say the Falling Sky one. I think when that came out, everyone didn't like it. It was supposed to be Uderzo's homage to Disney. I think at one point Asterix said, "Are you taking the Mickey?" It just fell out of place. It's something Asterix never said before. Wait a minute. Does he say taking the Mickey because the alien is supposed to resemble Mickey Mouse? Is that a legitimate joke that it's taken me 10 years or more to get.
What is your stance on Tintin and Alph-Art?
Tintin and Alph-Art is infamously the comic Hergé was working on when he died. All we have left are rough sketches and an unfinished story. It's also difficult to critique it because it was an unfinished work. Who knows what he would have changed or what other directions he would have taken it in. There is available online, I think. Someone has remastered. I don't know if they've done it with permission or not, but they've remastered all the drawings to make it look like as Hergé would have finished it, and they've also finished the story. We've all got to go sometime, and Halisti lasted longer than René Goscinny did.
What is your favourite Lucky Luke comic?
I'm going to pick The Dalton's Cure because it's the only one of the classic Lucky Luke comics that hasn't been adapted for TV. I do genuinely like the story, although the psychiatrist's complete turn. I'm going to take over the world. That complete flip from one page to the other, that's the flaw of the comic.
What is your favourite Asterix film?
I think most of, if not all, the Asterix films do verge on being from good to very good. Only with the live action ones there's the bad to okay. The 12 Tasks of Asterix, that's sort of its own thing. That wasn't based on a particular one of the comics. I really like Asterix Conquers America, Asterix and the Big Fight. I know I spent 2 videos sort of making fun of it, but I do like it. I do like the eerie atmosphere it creates. Didn't much care for Asterix and the Vikings.
A mustache, big mustache, thick mustache, my mustache.
I like having a moustache, and I always wanted to have one. But it's not a very good moustache. Right after we finished filming Hobogeddon, which was 6 years ago next month. And I just let it grow. Occasionally trimmed it, of course, because if not it would have just sprouted out. It's quite low. Some of you may think I trim it to be this low, but I don't. It doesn't want to grow any higher than that.
Will you ever shave off your moustache?
If you watch my reaction to the Ghostbusters reboot, and then the Tom and Jerry and the Chocolate Factory, our reaction to that, you'll notice that my moustache goes from being mildly bushy to not remotely bushy. And I shaved it again in February of this year. I didn't film any videos to camera. I didn't film another one of those for nearly 2 months, so in that time it had grown back again.
Where did you get that hat?
Is this an authentic bowler hat? Or just what I got from a costume shop? I got it from my stepdad's cousin, or his uncle. He bought this hat in the 60s because the Queen or some member of the royal family was going to be visiting the train station he worked at. So, you know, everyone had to make sure they were smartly dressed and all the men had to get bowler hats. So he got it for that occasion, and he said he'd never worn it since then. And when my stepdad saw it, he said, oh, my stepson would love that. He's really interested in Charlie Chaplin, Laurel and Hardy. This is the kind of thing he would love to have. And yeah, so that's why I have a bowler hat.
Do you sleep in that amazing bowler hat?
I actually keep this in a pound shop bag.
What is the worst movie you have watched?
Putting aside that I've seen some truly terrible films that have been reviewed by the likes of Phalis, the Cinema Snob, Diamanda Hagen. The ones I've seen myself, I think the Laurel and Hardy, The New Adventures of Laurel and Hardy. But I wouldn't go as far to say it was truly, truly terrible. It was terrible as a Laurel and Hardy product, but as a film, it was just a very not good comedy. It's a hard time choosing between The Human Centipede 3 and Zombie Hunter. They're both terrible films. I guess Zombie Hunter because its effects were just as shitty as its story and characters and dialogue.
What are your favourite movies?
I'll pick 5 films I love from 5 different genres. Jaws, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, Oliver, The Ballad of the Daltons, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets.
Favourite movie adaptation of a TV show?
The Dad's Army movie, and no, I don't mean the 2016 one, I mean the one from 1971 that was done with the original cast. That was actually my introduction to Dad's Army. We watched it in primary school as a tie-in to learning about the Second World War. And everyone else was boring. And me who'd been raised on the likes of Open All Hours and the Two Ronnies, was loving it, loving the characters, and when I saw that it was going to be on TV one day, thanks to the Radio Times, that's how I fell in love with Dad's Army, by seeing it on TV. It wasn't something that I grew up watching with my family. I sort of discovered it on my own. The film does have a few flaws to it, and I think it was kind of a dick move that they replaced the actress who played Mrs. Pike, who unfortunately I can't remember her name. Is it Janet Davies? They replaced her with Liz Fraser, specifically to give the film a bit of sex appeal. That's kind of gay.
Would you consider reviewing A Hard Day's Night?
I love A Hard Day's Night. I really do. I think it's a great film, especially if you can work out what the Beatles are actually saying.
Aye, but don't rush, none of your 5-bar gate jumps and over sort of stuff.
Not a fan of the last 10 minutes or so where you got the constant screaming fangirls. John Paul! That makes me cringe so much. On the other hand, Help was a completely different style of film. Hard Day's Night had that realism to it. Help is like a surreal. Oh, I've just realised there was also Yellow Submarine as well. I've seen Yellow Submarine once when I was a child. I haven't watched it since then, and that was definitely surrealistic. As for me reviewing it, probably.
Do you like the 1958 film A Night to Remember?
I do. I really like that film. A Night to Remember is one of the many films about the sinking of the Titanic. I personally prefer it to James Cameron's Titanic. It's got just a touch more of that gritty realism, probably helped by the fact it's in black and white, but also because it includes the story of the SS Californian. If you're at all interested in disaster movies or just the Titanic in general and you haven't seen it, then definitely go check out A Night to Remember. The best line, of course, in the 1997 Titanic movie is, "For the ship can't sink. She's made of iron, sir. I assure you, she can."
Will you review the rest of the Home Alone movies?
Probably not. I think so many people have already reviewed the Home Alone films, there's very little I can add to it. If they make a 6th one, then yeah, I'll surely check it out, especially if it's as crap as the 5th one was.
Have you ever attempted to watch the rest of the Beethoven movies?
I have seen and I own the first Beethoven on DVD. I also watched the second one on TV when I was a child, but I haven't seen it since then. Home Alone 3, Beethoven's Third, I had on VHS, and of course I did review it. I know they've done a Beethoven's 4, and I think that they've done a 5, maybe a 6 as well, but I haven't seen those. Maybe I'll check it out one day. Never say never.
Will you ever review other railway-themed movies?
Perhaps.
What's your favourite Marx Brothers movie?
Monkey Business is my favourite Marx Brother film. That's the one where for the majority of the film they're causing havoc as stowaways on board a ship, and for the last, 20 minutes or more, something like that, they're causing havoc at a wealthy man's house party.
Have you seen the Paddington movies?
I haven't seen the Paddington movies. I don't even think I've seen a trailer for Paddington 2. I saw the trailer for Paddington 1 and like everyone else thought, oh god, here we go, another British classic being tarnished by the cinema. I never saw the Paddington TV series when I was a child, but I had one of the books, Paddington Takes a Bath, which I don't know if, like Postman Pat, that was an adaptation of the TV series, or if the TV series was an adaptation of the book. Because I know that happened with Postman Pat, which, you know, was the opposite of what they did with Thomas.
May I ask as to when you'll review Sherlock Gnomes?
Never!
American or British movies?
Without a doubt, American movies. You've got so many different studios that have produced so much great content, and a lot of shit content as well. However, I will say British TV beats American TV.
What's your opinion on the Christopher Robin movie?
The trailer for that film popped up in my suggestions on YouTube a few weeks ago, and I thought, oh, I should click on that and watch it, but I didn't, so let's watch it now. What happens when a mild-mannered businessman has a complete psychological breakdown? Take a look, blind. Where's Rabbit, damn it? Well, if I was actually a fan of Disney's Winnie the Pooh, I'd probably have an erection right now.
I noticed you have a poster of the Beatles. What is your favourite song from the band?
It was 20 years ago today. Sergeant Pepper told the band to play. That's one of my favourite Beatles songs. I think my absolute favourite is probably Yellow Submarine. Can't buy me love.
Who are your favourite musicians?
My favourite band are One Hit Wonders. They've been going for quite a while now, and they've done some damn good stuff, like the Safety Dance. I like a huge variety of music. My absolute favourites would be Simon and Garfunkel, Bob Dylan, Cat Stevens, the Beatles. I like Queen as well. Yeah, mostly stuff from the 60s and 80s. I could not name you a song that's out in the charts right now. To showcase my contrast in musical taste, my three favourite songs I'm listening to at the moment are Poison by Alice Cooper, Country Roads Take Me Home by John Denver, and I've Got a Little List by Gilbert and Sullivan.
Do you like Primus?
I can't say I like Primus because I only know two of their songs and I haven't gone out of my way to follow or even pay attention to the band. But the two songs I like are Lee Van Cleef and, of course, the South Park intro.
I'm going out to South Park, gonna have myself a time.
What was your reaction to Rik Mayall not being in Harry Potter?
It's really not surprising the character of Peeves was cut out of Harry Potter. I mean, they had John Cleese as Nearly Headless Nick, who disappeared after the first two movies when they completely changed in style and tone. He said that was the best film he'd ever been in because he got paid for it, but he wasn't actually in it. Although you could make the argument if he was in it, he would have got more attention from being in it, and that may have led to other things.
What is your favourite thing Rik Mayall did?
Well, if I had to pick just one thing Rik Mayall did, it would have to be Bottom. I prefer the first three live shows to the three series of the television series they did. But I prefer Guest House Paradiso to the last two live shows they did.
Who in the acting world would you sacrifice to bring Rik Mayall back?
Well, see, the problem here is you weren't specific enough. See, I could pick someone that no one likes, like fucking Pauly Shore. Granted, he's not an actor, he's a comedian, allegedly. So... Tom Cruise.
What was your first introduction to Rik Mayall?
The three things I know now that I knew Rik Mayall in when I was a child were the Snow Queen,
I'm down and dirty.
Shoebox Zoo,
We have more important matters to which we must attend, namely finding the book.
and Asterix Conquers America, although he wasn't credited for that and it doesn't quite sound like Rik Mayall.
A prophet is without honor in his own land.
But that was all hearing him. The first time I remember seeing him proper was in Blackadder.
My God!
Yes, I suppose I am.
But I didn't know who he was, and I was more won over by the series in general than just that specific character. And then not too long after that, so this is... I was about 15 or so at that point. And again, I have to thank my stepdad, just like for thanking him for the bowler hat. I have to thank him for introducing me to Rik Mayall properly, because we were just looking for something to watch on the TV, and he said, "Oh, Bottom's on. Do you want to watch Bottom?" So, Bottom? What's Bottom? I've never heard of that. He's like, "You've never seen Bottom? Oh, you have to watch it." So the first episode I saw was Bottom Doe. Obviously, loved it. But right after that, they showed the first live stage show. Overnight, I became a Rik Mayall fan. And then looking up stuff he did, I thought, oh, and he was the guy who was in Blackadder as Flash Art. And it just snowballed from there. A year or two later, I found his autobiography, or his spoof autobiography, and just from reading the first page, I thought immediately that this is the funniest thing I've ever seen on paper. The years went on, explored more stuff he was in. The New Statesman as Alan Bastard. I've seen a good 75% of everything Rik Mayall did that was captured on film.
Do you watch Futurama?
Only a handful of times, and I never got into it. It would always be a sort of check out for 5 minutes and then think, not for me. To be fair, you have to have a very high IQ to understand the intricacies of the jokes in Futurama. I do love Dr. Zoidberg, though. That is generally a great character. Why not Zoidberg?
What is your favourite Simpsons scene?
Can't think of a favourite scene, but favourite episodes. There's just so many to pick. I don't like people who take the attitude that, oh, the Simpsons died in season 9 thanks to Principal and the Pauper. First of all, I don't mind Principal and the Pauper. Well, you can't just do that. That's disrespectful. It's a comedy show. The Simpsons house changes position. All the buildings in Springfield change position all the time to suit the joke. I mean, I do understand why people don't like the episode. From season 9, I think, to season 11 or 12, it went through a transformation where it became less heartfelt, or the stories became less heartfelt and emotional, and more just about being funny. And that's fine by me. It's a comedy show. I want to watch it to laugh. But by season 13, that's when The Simpsons should have died.
Do you like tugs?
Well, I'd be a liar if I said I didn't like to have a good tug now and then. I never saw tugs growing up, and it was something I only discovered via the internet, of course. I wasn't hooked by it, but I can definitely say I enjoyed it, and I liked the characters. Series 1 to 5 of Thomas and Friends is better than the one series of tugs that was made. Series 6 onwards, tugs is better.
Have you watched any of the late Fred Dibner's documentaries?
I personally haven't watched his shows, but I do know who he is, thanks to, once again, my stepdad, who was a fan of his work. By the way, he's been dead for over 10 years. Late doesn't apply.
Who shot Mr. Burns?
Has anyone noticed that Jimbo Jones was standing at the crime scene when it happened, yet no one questioned him about it?
What other kid shows did you watch growing up?
The ones I had on VHS were Watch with Mother, I'm and Sam, Postman Pat, Thomas. I also had a VHS of Topsy and Tim, the animated series. Tintin, the Looney Tunes, Tom and Jerry. As for shows that were being made while I was growing up that I watched, The Animals of Farthing Wood, The Demon Headmaster, The Story of Tracy Beaker, The Basil Brush Show, The Fairly Odd Parents. Those are a few of my favourite things.
What are your favourite and least favourite British comedy shows?
If I had to pick one British comedy show, it would have to be Dad's Army. As for one that I don't like, I'm tempted to say Father Ted just because I think it is a bit overrated, but I do like the show, so I hear you're a racist new father. Are You Being Served? That kind of crass, innuendo, heavy comedy doesn't do much for me. It's okay, but, you know, I wouldn't want to watch every episode of it, you know, maybe watch a couple of episodes and go, okay, I've got the drift for it now. Whereas Allo Allo, even though it was written and made by the same people, I think Allo Allo did it a lot better.
What's your favourite episode of The Young Ones?
Sick or Bomb. In that episode I really like the, of course, the TV detector man, Mr. Bastard.
Have you ever watched Codename Kids Next Door?
Nope.
What's your opinion on Mr. Blobby?
Mr. Blobby is one of those things that never frightened or creeped me out as a child, but looking back on it I go, my god, did he do a show with Noel Edmonds or something? Oh, they should have had him as a celebrity guest on Deal or No Deal.
What is your opinion of the Trumptonshire series?
I've only ever watched one episode of Camberwick Green, because it was on a VHS tape I had of, I think it was volume 3 of Watch with Mother, the best of Watch with Mother. And I really liked it, I enjoyed it, I liked the fact it was stop motion and simplistic, and all the characters, there was little songs, and the music as well was nice, quaint and charming.
Have you ever watched Bertha?
The closest I've come to watching Bertha was a YouTube poop made by WTL Network.
Do you think they should do a modern update of the Demon Headmaster using the original actors?
Yeah, I would definitely watch that. They could do, I suppose. Most of the cast are still actors.
Do you like Family Guy?
From probably 2009 till 2012, I used to watch it all the time. But with increasingly the opinion that wasn't as good as it used to be, and that was purely because of characters like Brian. I can identify with his beliefs, or rather his lack of beliefs, being a liberal and an atheist, but the way they just hammer it down the throats of the viewers, and also when they did that episode where he did a complete flip and he realised, wow, it's wonderful being a conservative. So when Quagmire did that speech about why he doesn't like Brian, I thought, yeah, that's right, he's a despicable character in a way. I haven't watched it for years, and I'd be lying if I said it never made me laugh till I ache, but I still prefer American Dad.
What's your least favourite TV show?
I once saw a show called Snog, Marry, Avoid, and the conclusion I got from that was that I wanted to fucking kill myself. Reality shows in general, a lot of them peeve me off. People are entitled to like what they want to like, and I'll like what I want to like.
CGI series or model series?
Everything's better with models.
What are your thoughts on the Thunderbirds franchise?
I used to really like watching Thunderbirds, but was at the same time a bit scared of it, understandably, you know, when they have episodes of people being trapped in lifts and trapped in safes and, oh my god, they're gonna die, and they'd have very dramatic music.
What is your favourite 1983 Lucky Luke episode?
I haven't actually watched every episode, however I do now have the entire English dub of the 1983 series. Here it is. For those of you who are Lucky Luke fans and wondering how on earth do I have this, this entire DVD of English dubbed Lucky Luke episodes, quite recently I found out that the English dubs of the 2 original series of adaptations aren't quite as rare as I thought they were. In fact, they were pretty much until the time I made that video. Someone must have thought, hey, maybe we should release these on DVD now because someone's made a video about it.
Have you seen the early 90s adaptations of the Viz comic?
I have seen one episode of the stop animated version of Fat Slags. They're adult cartoons, but taking it to the extreme, fucking and shit and all that malarkey.
Look what you'll be missing if you marry that skinny cow.
Comedy gold.
Are you going to review more of Nelvana's content besides their Tintin adaptations?
Did they do the Babar cartoons? The one about the humanized elephants that were rich? I don't plan to, but never say never.
Can you do a Inbetweeners review?
The only clip I've seen of the show is the Bus Wankers bit, which I only saw because at college one day they compared it with the American version.
Bus wankers! Bastards!
Will you ever do videos on the children's series Spywatch?
I've never heard of Spywatch, so I think you're more likely to see me review something like The Queen's Nose, which even then I don't have any plans currently to review. Now, Bernard's Watch, on the other hand.
What's your opinion on seasons 17 to 20 of Thomas?
From the little I do know about this era of the show, that's when episodes went from being 5 minutes long to 10 minutes long, and the writing got better, I think. They also began to show a bit more love to the original by bringing back certain characters like Daisy and finally having the small railway engines in the Arsdale Railway. I like looking back at the original series and being nostalgic for my childhood, what I grew up with, but also just looking at the models and the fresh steam and thinking that was there. Not so much the, oh, it's just a computer generated image, which I'm not saying people don't put effort into creating them, that's a complete lie. People of course do put effort to making that, but it doesn't have the same feel. And I think also what turns me away from it is that it is played down more for children. Which isn't surprising because it's a kid show, its target demographic I think is toddlers, so I think the series was definitely starting to get better. And then of course they've announced this reboot. Well, we'll see where that takes things.
Will you do any more Thomas comparison videos? When will you be doing another Thomas and Friends book comparison video?
This is the question I get on practically a daily basis because people can't seem to fathom the idea that I will be talking about every book of the Railway series that was adapted for the television series. And in a way it's my own fault because I haven't been doing them in order. Because when I started doing Spot the Difference videos, I wasn't sure how they were going to be received. I decided, well, in case no one watches them or they get disliked, I'm just going to do my favourite stories. But now, I think it should be fairly obvious that yes, I am going to be doing them all. So what I've decided to do, as of after this video, I will be doing them in order from now on. And that goes for the Lucky Luke and Tintin comics as well. So, if after doing the next one and the one after, you're still asking me, are you going to do this book as well? I'm going to block you.
Have you watched Shed 17?
I have watched Shed 17. In fact, I'm subscribed to Paul's vids. Because I'm looking forward to his next Thomas and Friends project. I think that people have reacted in different ways. They've been shocked, like, oh my god, oh this is horrible. I'm more of the viewer who watched it and sort of laughed at it, but was still creeped out by it, and there's definitely creepy things in it. Just the idea that these steam trains have living organs inside them. An interesting theory. And quite horrific one, I suppose. Entertaining. That's what I have to say about Shed 17. It's entertaining, and I'm looking forward to the next one.
How long have you been a Thomas fan?
I liked Thomas when I was a child. I would even go as far to say as I was fanatical about Thomas when I was a child. Now that I'm older, I'm fanatical about other things, such as The Simpsons and the life and career of Rik Mayall. I think it's an understandable thing people would associate. If I make videos about this particular subject, I must be really in love with it. I do love the original because that is attached to my childhood, and I like the stories and I like the characters, but I don't have a huge interest in the show. I don't watch the new episodes. I haven't watched the new films. So by a lot of people's estimations, that wouldn't make me a fan. I liked the show, and I like making videos about the era of the show that I liked.
Which stories from the Railway series do you wish were adapted for the TV series of Thomas and Friends?
Triple header. Oh, what's the one with Henry where he pulls the two diesels? Super Rescue.
Do you plan to review the books Thomas's Christmas Party and Thomas and the Missing Christmas Tree?
You can expect a Spot the Difference video on at least one of those two books coming up this Christmas.
What was the first episode you remember watching of Thomas and Friends?
I would say The Sad Story of Henry is very probably the first episode of Thomas I ever watched. And I've deduced this because I had tons of the Thomas and Friends VHSs, meaning I had several of the same episodes several times. Something happened when I was about 2 years old where I discovered that I could take the VHS covers out of the VHSs. And I tore them, I nibbled them. So that meant we had, I don't know, 5 or more VHSs that didn't have any covers on them. There was the Jungle Book, Robin Hood, all the Postman Pat VHSs, and one Thomas and Friends. The first episode on the video was The Sad Story of Henry.
What is your opinion on Thomas the Tank Engine fan fiction?
I used to be quite interested in fan fiction when I was younger. In fact, I even made up a few myself. One was it was Harry Potter, but it included characters from various things I loved. So I think instead of Voldemort, it was the Dalton brothers. One of Harry's sidekicks was Iago the Parrot. Thompson and Thompson were in it. Some of the very first Thomas things I watched on YouTube were the what you would call as fanfics. Purely because they were taking the characters and making up their own stories with them. The YouTubers I used to watch that did original Thomas and Friends content were Miss Oliver and Blossom, Spark Shot.
Are you going to review any other Thomas and Friends movies, and what's your opinion on Big World, Big Adventures?
You may at some point, not too far away, once of course it actually comes out, be seeing me give my opinions in a video.
When you were making your review of the Thomas the Tank Engine episode Ghost Train for your Spot the Difference series, did you ever felt tempted to squeeze in a reference to the creepypasta Timothy the Tank Engine?
No.
If you were to write the Magic Railroad, what kind of story would you have come up with?
I'd have probably come up with something along the lines of Calling All Engines.
Would you review the director's cut of Thomas and the Magic Railroad if it ever comes out?
Yes, but that will never happen.
Why did you want to make videos on YouTube, and who are your inspirations for doing reviews?
I started uploading videos to YouTube in 2010. To begin with, for the first few years, I just uploaded clips from my favourite shows like Columbo and Lucky Luke, and compilation things from Disney. I also dabbled in making some YouTube poops, a couple of which I've re-uploaded to this channel. Now, about this time, I also discovered the Nostalgia Critic, and a great example of being able to enjoy something despite not agreeing with their opinion is that the first one of his reviews I watched was of the Tom and Jerry movie. Now, I personally quite like that film, or at least don't hate it. And here he was, very comedically ripping it apart. And at that point he had a back catalogue of about 2 or 3 years worth of work for me to go and enjoy. So for the next few years I was watching Nostalgia Critic videos, but he is not the person who inspired me to actually do reviews. The first channel I had got hit with a copyright strike, and I was so terrified that, oh no, I'm going to be sued, I'm going to be arrested, blah blah blah, that I deleted all the videos on the channel and started up this one. I thought, well, let's start from scratch. What I decided to do, and hence the name of the channel, was I did compilation videos of characters. And I did this for a few months. I started watching more of the other producers on the Channel Awesome website. Phaelus, The Cinema Snob, Sad Panda and Welshie. That prompted me to think, you know, maybe I should do something like this. Because maybe if I do, one day I might get to work or collaborate with these people. And that may sound quite shallow, but there are plenty of people online who only started doing this because, yes, they had a sort of interest in media, but they wanted to one day work on Channel Awesome or be a part of Channel Awesome. I know Obscura Slooper and Blockbuster Buster, they've said that's exactly why they started. And so I decided, let's give reviewing a try. So I got rid of the character compilation videos. And the reason I chose Asterix and the Big Fight to be the first film I talked about is because I remember years before when I thought about contacting the Nostalgia Critic to say, hey, have you ever seen Asterix? Do you want to maybe review one of his films? So that was on the back of my mind when I was deciding, okay, well, what film should I talk about? And the rest is history. As for whether I still like the Nostalgia Critic, considering all the controversy of Channel Awesome that's happened, I was actually aware of most of that before it was publicly displayed in April and led to tons of people making videos about it. And I knew about it just because when they left/were fired from Channel Awesome in 2015, Phaelus and Obscura Slooper, they did lengthy Tumblr posts about it, explaining what exactly happened. Sad Panda and Welshie were always very vocal, but in a teasing way, about the inadequacies of the management at Channel Awesome. And in his podcasts, Lord Cat had mentioned numerous times that when he was part of Channel Awesome, that was the reason he left, was he thought these people are completely clueless, they've got no idea about the direction they want to take their channel, or rather they do, and it's a very flawed one. So I wasn't really shocked by anything that came out of the Change the Channel movement, and neither am I surprised that it didn't kill Channel Awesome. It killed the website, or at least fatally wounded it, but you know, the Nostalgia Critic, he's still making videos, and I just started to get a bit fed up with his style. It's inevitable that something you find funny the first time may not be as funny 4 years later. You know, that's inevitable, really. Some things are, plenty of things are, but there's some things that the gimmick wears off. I could have very easily started making these videos years and years ago. Like, at the time, a lot of producers who were on Channel Awesome, they started about 2008. I could have started then. And doubly more annoying is that rather than the Nostalgia Critic being the one who inspired me to make reviews, comedic reviews, he actually inspired me to make my own sort of feature film, like he did with Kick-Assy and Suburban Nights, which led to the creation of the heavily flawed Hobogeddon. So, as if I didn't have enough reasons to dislike the Nostalgia Critic nowadays, he's partly responsible for Hobogeddon.
Is YouTube your full-time job?
While I do make money off these videos, it's nowhere near enough where I could live off making these videos, or at least declare it to be a proper job. For that, I'd have to be getting thousands of views on my videos every time I uploaded them, and on average I'm only getting a few hundred in 24 hours. It might happen one day, although I'd much rather just keep it as a part-time job, because I can't see myself continuing it forever, or at least continuing it to the point of being able to make it a constantly weekly thing for the next several years. For the first year and a half, I was a student. I didn't have a job. But from the summer of 2015 to the end of last year, 2017, I was working in retail. I was working in a supermarket, and then for the last few months of the year I moved to a corner shop, which I enjoyed. I did enjoy working there. The only main downside wasn't having to deal with the public, it was having to deal with the management. They were very bad at communicating with the staff. I left retail right at the start of this year and started working in a warehouse, finding various items to then be shipped off via a van or a lorry. I enjoyed that job and it was well paid, but unfortunately in April they decided not to continue my contract. And they'd not really given me any indication. They gave me indication that could be a thing, but leading up to it they hadn't indicated that, oh, you know, you're on thin ice, you might not make the cut of remaining a part of our team. About the time I was let go, I discovered there was my local business that did promotional videos for various independent businesses, and they were looking for an editor and cameraman. Unfortunately, not full-time. They said they could only use me once in a while. So that's pretty much what I've been doing. The last couple of months I've been working once in a while as a camera editor and a cameraman and editor. Because it's so irregular, I'm trying to find another job. Yay! Life.
Who are your favourite YouTubers?
My favourite YouTube videos are YouTube Poops and Dubs and Gmods. A few names to highlight would be Gertilish, Bristles and Joey Snowy, the abridged series of Yu-Gi-Oh! And Dragon Ball Z, Purple Eyes WTF. Last year I started watching the videos of iDubbbz and Filthy Frank. And right at the beginning of this year I was finally won over by the biggest of them all, PewDiePie. And yes, you can make the big argument that he's not entertaining, his editors are entertaining. Yes, I'm now one of the bro army.
Your least favourite online shows?
Oh god, where to start?
Time for me to make money off your hard work. Alright, let's react!
I don't get Gilbert Gottfried. Why are you talking like that?
And of course the culture of spoiled little rich whores, being the Paul brothers, Jake Paul, Logan Paul, and similar people who are just as shitty, such as Rice Gum. What I am interested to see is just how these people will continue on, because they're all in their early 20s. I just think, if that's what they're like now, these arrogant, wealthy prats, what are they going to be like in 20, 30, 40 years' time? If there is a god, at least one of them will take a little trip down to the suicide forest. This last batch of questions, I couldn't be bothered trying to sort them out into specific categories, so it's a bit of a cluster of questions.
Do you prefer a certain time period?
A lot of people would assume my favourite time period would be the 60s and 70s. I myself would assume that. Then I have to remind myself that most of the DVDs I own are films and TV shows that were made in the last 20 years.
Can you please do less book versus TV episodes?
If I stopped making the Spot the Difference videos, my channel would very likely shrivel up and die. So while most people are still enjoying those videos and I'm still enjoying making them, that ain't gonna happen. However, to combat your wish of making less of them, I will try to make more character chronicles and movie riff reviews, etc. to balance them out a bit more.
When is your next review?
It's a bit personal, isn't it?
Have you attended any events or conventions?
I've only attended one convention, which was quite a few years ago. I went to a comic book superhero convention thing in Glasgow.
Which one of your videos are you the most proud of?
I am proud of my review of The Curse of Steptoe. It gave me the opportunity to defend the life of Harry H. Corbett and point out just how unethical the makers of the programme just took rumours and put them forth as if they were the truth. And in addition to that, it was so inaccurate for the timeline of events. For example, saying that Harry H. Corbett is the one who ended the show because his son was born and he realised, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to appear in this crap anymore. That is not how it happened, and that is not how he felt. Yes, he was typecast, but he was at least glad to have been typecast in something that he was happy to be in.
Do you do your videos by script or self-opinion?
I don't quite understand your question. I do script the videos, and the script involves my opinions, though quite often I exaggerate those opinions for attempted comedic purposes.
Why you so sexy?
I think you're confusing me for Rowan Atkinson. That guy's hot.
Are you a brony? Don't you just love Beyonce?
She's got a big bottom.
Do you think David Bowie would have been a good Dracula?
I haven't seen Labyrinth, but based on David Bowie's performance in the music videos for Starman and Space Oddity, yes.
Do you have any hobbies?
Well, technically this channel is a hobby. It certainly can't be classed as a job since I don't earn much money from it, even though I do treat it a bit like it's a job. In my spare time I like to just go out for long walks, go for bike rides. I live out in quite a remote area, so luckily there's lots of walk paths and fields for me to stroll through. If it's a nice sunny day, I like to sit out in the garden and read a book, and I also like doing jigsaw puzzles.
Will you ever upload the entire Hobogeddon movie?
If I ever start a Patreon fan funding thing, I'll guarantee that the entirety of Hobogeddon will be one of the rewards, so we'll just see how much you're desperate to see it then.
Do you have model trains?
Does this count? I used to have all the ERTL of Thomas and Friends characters, but they were all given away one day with my permission. On the one hand, it would be nice to still have a few of them, but on the other hand, they were pretty chipped and cracked from years of being thrown down the stairs and rammed into brick walls.
Do you like the Team Fortress 2 video game?
I love playing TF2. Not so much in the last few years, because they really shot themselves in the foot with the Meet Your Match update, where you have to wait to load into a game. I don't play that anymore. I play the just where you can join online servers that other people have made, fans have made. I discovered the game quite late, considering it had been out for several years by that point. 2012, my friend George was playing it, and I just got over to visit him. And I thought, oh, what's this you're playing? Team Fortress 2. I said, oh, looks quite fun. Then he told me it was free. From the moment of downloading it, I pretty much played it every day for a couple of years at least, and then that got to be at least once a week, then once a month.
Where do you live?
I live in Dorset. I was born and raised in Scotland, and then in 2010, after I finished school, I moved down to Dorset to go to college, but also to live with my mum, because at that point my parents had divorced and my mum decided to move back to where she grew up. Also, the fact she'd met my stepdad who lived in Dorset helped.
Are you proud to be British?
I'm a product of multiculturalism. My mum's English, my dad's African. I grew up in Scotland. I think having national pride divides us into it's them and us. You know, this idea of foreigners, and yes, there's people who we don't speak the same language, but at the end of the day, we're all humans.
Will you make a video about the Noddy Theatre show?
I forgot to mention Noddy as one of the shows I watched. I did have 2 VHS tapes of Noddy's Toyland Adventures, which I mentioned in the Demon Headmaster video that I I was a bit disappointed that hasn't been given a DVD release yet. It hopefully will do someday. I mean, they're only just really starting to put some of the classics on, like Chucklevision, and again the Demon Headmaster. Simple media, get on it.
What is your favourite chocolate bar?
Anyone remember Mars Delight? Because that was my favourite chocolate bar when I was a teenager. As for chocolate that you can still currently buy, Double Decker.
Who are your favourite comedians and actors?
My favourite stand-up comedians are Gilbert Gottfried, George Carlin, Chris Rock, and Frankie Boyle. I'll go for comedic actors and say Ryan Reynolds, Nick Offerman, Rik Mayall, he was an actor and a comedian, and Ronnie Barker and Peter Sellers, two of the greatest character actors. Ronnie Barker specialised in television, and Peter Sellers obviously was a film star.
Why do meta jokes equal not funny?
Oh yeah, we just know certain bits of this movie while we review it, but then we're surprised later, right?
Why did you resign? I do hope that you get this reference.
I'm assuming you're talking about why do I no longer have a storyline in my videos. In case any of you didn't pick up on it, I used to have a storyline where I was a butler who in my spare time made videos. And I was really just the assistant to my friend Peter's character, who was Nigel Winston Handbasket. And this was carrying on the storyline from Hobogeddon, and when I started doing reviews I thought, oh, that would be kind of nice to combine those two. Which really, thinking back on it, you kind of think, well, nice for who? No one else besides me and Peter would get their reference. A couple of years went by of doing that, and I just grew more and more sick of doing it, because I was realising this is pointless. We don't need to be doing this. And it worked for just having the occasional bit of Nigel popping in and criticising me or doing something funny, but overall it was pointless. It was pointless. And I wasn't getting any feedback either of people saying, oh, gotta love that Nigel and Jeffrey scenes. Then Peter just started popping in as being Nigel but still being himself. And then of course in the reaction videos where we mostly see Peter and my friend George now, who played Velociraptor, they're just themselves, just like I'm in those reaction videos, I'm myself.
Have you ever read Duck Avenger?
No, but I have read the Chicken Run novelization.
Can you please praise Peter Davison?
Who?
Would you accept me as a collaborator on your future output, and as such have the right to use your private contact to enable me to send you a script?
Nah.
Should the government reopen the 9/11 case? May I suggest you do a unboxing vid on something? How many videos of yours are monetized?
The majority of my videos are monetized, with the exception of videos where I put very little creative effort into making. For example, the 2 or 3 or whatever YouTube poops I've made, I've monetized them, but I haven't monetized my compilations of the Simpson characters in The Simpsons Hit and Run. As for the dreaded yellow $sign, that has only happened to a couple of my videos. Very surprisingly, it strikes me as very funny as the Human Centipede 3 review, which I uploaded just about the time that was all kicking off in August of last year, has never had an issue with it being monetized, whereas the video I uploaded the week after of the Lucky Luke comic Nitroglycerine, that is and remains demonetized. But since then, it happens very rarely that I've uploaded a video and it's said, sorry, you can't monetize this, inappropriate content or whatever, and then I've just asked it for review, and then like within a day or two, it's come up as being a change from yellow to green. It wouldn't bother me if it was even a good yellow, but it's a dirty yellow. Datty.
Would you rather collaborate with a nostalgia critic, the Unlucky Tug, or Huey Toon Moore?
Well, putting aside that I no longer like the nostalgia critic, even if I did, I don't think it would be wise to be seen as a collaborator with him after the channel some controversy happened a couple months ago. As for the other two, the Unlucky Tug has retired, And I've never heard of the other guy.
Oh yeah, well he's probably never heard of you either, Jeffrey. Shut your thick up.
What editing software do you use to make your videos?
The editing software I use is called VideoPad. Some people would describe it as only being a slight step up from Windows Movie Maker. I downloaded it several years ago so I could edit Hobogen with it. And although I've used other editing software since then, I've had trials of Premiere and Sony Vegas. I just kept using the VideoPad. With that said, I do have Photoshop. Last question, please.
What are you planning next for the channel?
At some point in the next coming months, probably by the end of the summer, I'll be launching my new review show called Obscure Observations. Unlike my previous attempts at reviewing, it will be less let's make fun of this, ha ha ha. They're going to be more like mini documentaries than actual reviews, but it's still kind of under that format. But as the title denotes, Obscure Observations, it's mostly going to be shows and films that I know most people I know haven't seen or heard of. So for example, Tugs. I'll do an episode about Tugs. For the first several episodes I'll cover shows I actually know or have a copy of on DVD, and after that I plan to branch out and do shows that I've never seen but I've heard of. For example, I know there's a sitcom Ronnie Corbett did before he did the two Ronnies. I'd quite like to see that. I can't remember what it's called now, but I mean, it's stuff that interests me and I'd like to see. I think, well, view it and take the opportunity to talk about it. Now, that might not interest most of you, but all I can say to that is I'm still going to make the Spot the Difference videos on Thomas the Tank Engine, Lucky Luke and Tintin. I'm still going to do comedic riff reviews of movies. Character Chronicles, I'll still do them from time to time, so thank you very much for watching this Q&A. Yay! And as a reward, if you still are watching it, the next 3 videos I'm going to make. A new reaction video with my friends Peter and George. That will be followed by a new railway series, Spot the Difference, and the week after that it will be a Spot the Difference of one of the Tintin movies, not the TV show, one of the movies. This is Jeffrey Kitsch saying, I've just wasted a few days editing this video when I could have spent that time writing, filming and editing an actually entertaining video.